about how to get smarter about threat intelligence. So a little bit about me. I'm a CEO and founder of a company. This isn't a product pitch, and don't hold my title against me. My background is I'm a computer scientist. I've been doing very technical things for many years. I've just lucked myself into being able to build a company around my latest idea. My background is I've done IA, I've done compliance, I've done pen testing, did a lot of engineering, a lot of security engineering, building systems that allow people to monitor and control security investments. But today I want to talk to you more about what I really enjoy, which is this merger of data analytics, threat intelligence, crowdsourcing, sharing. We've lumped all these things into this one big topic, and it's all about data, and it's all about making better decisions with data. And so that's what my talk is about today. So I don't know if you realized, but back in 2011, Charmin created the world's largest roll of toilet paper. At 9 feet, around not 8 feet, 9 inches, or something right around that, they got the Guinness Book of World Records largest toilet paper roll. This is how I feel about big data analytics. It may be big, but just like this roll of toilet paper, how usable is big data? So my talk today is going to be a mixture of big data with a bunch of other things sprinkled in. They're all my pet projects. So what is big data? Who in this room thinks they can define big data in a sentence? All right, good, because I would have asked you all to leave. So big data, how big is big? What is useful? Is big and useful the same things? What problem are you trying to solve with big data? These are all the questions that I generally ask when I go into discussions and someone throws out well, your product must do big data analytics, or my problem is a big data problem. So I'm a computer scientist, remember, and I try to toe the line and moving into a world where I say we sell big data. So I'm going to talk to you more about that. So another thing to think about is what becomes useful. And so just like the little tiny roll of toilet paper here is useful, I want to frame the conversation today to really focus in on how to look at data in a useful way. And useful in my scenario is going to be about your organizations versus, I know that some of you are likely either part of massive companies that have lots of resources to go do big data analytics, or you're on the vendor side and you say your data makes your product better. And so just like I don't care where toilet paper comes from, I don't necessarily care how you make your product better. I just want to be a consumer of it. And so being able to toe the line of what big data means to you is the purpose of my talk. So I don't know if you knew, but there is actually a toilet paper encyclopedia on the internet. Who knew? This is somewhere where you can go to find staggering statistics like how many people are wadders versus rollers, and how many people put the roll on one way versus another. These are statistics that I bet you never even thought about as you were spending nearly probably a decade in your bathroom. So let's move past the cool factor of now knowing these statistics and being able to go back and tell your families about them, and let's think about the world in Charmin's eyes. So Charmin today sells toilet paper. They do it around the world. They have massive operations. They're part of Procter & Gamble, which has massive product sets that intersect with toilet paper. And they really, really care about toilet paper, probably as much as you and I do. So when they look at toilet paper, they want to know things like how many rolls of toilet paper on average their customer is going to use. They're going to want to understand what the best go-to-market is, what store in what proximity to your house has the most likely chance of providing you the product that they sell. So these are the kinds of situations that require data analytics. Now, whether this is big data or medium-sized data, I don't really care. It's all about providing a useful solution to a known problem, which is I want to sell my product, I want to bring it to market, I want to get it into the hands of my customers and do it quickly. So Amazon, Walmart, and any of your businesses, likely, if you forget about security, they're using data to make decisions today. So security should be no different. So what does it mean to leverage data to make decisions? Rick Holland, who's a Forrester analyst, talks about the term threat intelligence. So I'm going to use another buzzword that all vendors are talking about today. But I'm going to qualify it by saying that threat intelligence is something that your organization can use to make decisions. And I'm going to leave it there because I don't think there is a one definition. But there are some tenets that might allow you to say whether some data or intelligence is good enough for your organization to make decisions on. And so the accuracy of the data that you receive, the integrated nature to your business, the relevancy to your business, these are things that as you look at the data you have and you start producing something that you can use to make decisions, the term threat intelligence becomes obvious at some point that you've moved beyond data, which is all the parts of the puzzle, to something that you can actually use to make a decision. And so data is not the answer. It's the solution to the problem that matters, and so we need to talk about that. But rather than talk all day about how we can analyze big data and know trends and be predictive, I want to take it back several notches. I want to talk about what data analytics looks like within your organization, because without understanding what's happening in your organization, there's no point in moving beyond that. So the first thing that happens when you start wanting to analyze data isn't going out and buying a Hadoop cluster, deploying it in the cloud, getting crowdsourcing a bunch of data, bringing in all your feeds. It should be just taking your incidents that you have today, your security response data for many years potentially, and looking at that and making sense of that, and then being able to take that to the next level, which then does require you to make additional decisions on enrichments of that data. So today, state of the art in most companies is email for communication of data, email for storage of indicators of compromise and the data to which the organization is running their security operations by. Maybe they've been advanced enough to move to a spreadsheet-based approach. So in what world throughout your businesses is a spreadsheet good enough to do anything? It may be a tool that your financial people use to do financial modeling, but it definitely should not be the tool of choice for a security practitioner. And I can tell you, because I have more problems with email, that I can't even search my email for email, let alone start looking for an incident report that happened 6 years ago. Outlook doesn't do search very well. And so if that's state of the art, we're in big trouble, folks. So more recently, I would say the last 12 months, people started looking at how to build their own data analytics capability so that they can make better decisions on the data that they have. They can bring in more data from elsewhere, and they can use that aggregate to empower their security operations, empower their incident responders. And this is not a trivial task. And so on the requirement side, you had things like, I want to suck up every piece of data known to man, and I want to make sense of it. And so that's a great goal, but one computer scientist to a whole bunch of technical people, it's impossible. You have to develop an ontology. You need to come up with a model to which you can associate data. This is complicated stuff that people take for granted because vendors talk about data analytics being something you buy. So even the most advanced data analytics platforms do not provide data analytics out of the box. You need to configure them, and it takes resources, time, it takes expertise, because you are the people that understand your mission, Data analytics companies understand how to look at data, but they don't understand how to look at data in the way that you need them to. So when you start thinking about building this for your own organization, I make the analogy that this is kind of like building a nuclear reactor in the basement of your house. It's pretty complicated stuff, and if your job is to build nuclear reactors, then by all means you should build one. But if you're an incident responder that now sees benefit in looking at data, your first inkling of resources shouldn't be to take your lunch hour and start building a data analytics platform, because it's a complicated space. It's even more complicated when you have users. Users ruin everything. It's really easy to deploy Hadoop and be a really smart guy that knows how to get to the data. It's really, really hard to be the smart guy that built it, that has a whole bunch of customers in your organization that all need to get to data, because they don't have the same intellect you do or the same capabilities you do, and being able to write the script that knows how to merge and associate the data, make sense of it, and bring that to bear in a useful way. So it's hard. So the industry, historically, ever since the advent of the need for solving hard problems, has come up with solutions to those problems. So I'm a kind of a simple thinker, and the way that I think about this is that if every solution to data analysis was solved with a big data analytics platform and a whole bunch of work, we'd be in big trouble today. Instead, you've seen throughout every part of your business some kind of platform that makes that data analysis easier. You have ERP for manufacturing. You have PeopleSoft for HR. You have CRM for sales. These are all platforms that didn't need to solve the problem of data analytics to solve world hunger, but rather data analytics or knowledge management to solve their specific mission, their specific set of requirements, which were sales, HR, manufacturing. So I envision that security is no different, and we're going to end up in an environment where there's an out-of-the-box capability that mostly makes sense of cyber threat use cases, but then you extend them to support your own requirements. So recently, I would say 6 months, there's a new term that's been coined, threat intelligence platform. This is something that Gartner and Forrester and customers have started talking about. It's very, very much an emerging space. And so my presentation is going to talk about why a threat intelligence platform is needed, but also is going to talk about what one might be. And this is still evolving, folks. So you guys in the room are going to look at this and say, well, I think it should do this or that. And you're likely right, because we don't know exactly what it will need to do yet. We just know that there's a fundamental need that is looking to be met by a specific set of technologies. So what is a threat intelligence platform? Pretty much universally across the industry, it's the idea of being able to aggregate data, whether that data comes from your IR team, comes from your threat intel vendor, comes from a community that you participate in. It doesn't matter. A threat intelligence platform would be defined as just something that aggregates information. And on the other end of the spectrum, I'm going to skip over the hard part, right, the analyze part. It's something that takes that new information and moves it into something that can do something with it. So this would be something that today is done by hand when you hand a snort signature off to your ops guy, or you give someone a Yara SIG, or you hand the CISO a report that you created by hand in Word documents and then PDF'd and then emailed him. That is the act side of this spectrum. As I mentioned, the hard part is analyze, and the reason that's hard is because you have various people's perspectives that are involved in this. Some people, I think that threat intelligence is just for those threat intelligence people in the organization. Well, most organizations don't have threat intelligence people. They have people that need a better understanding of the space to which they operate so they can make better decisions. And they're not threat intelligence people, they're the IR team. It's the CISO that needs to spend money on A or B and doesn't know which is higher priority because all of his incidents have been captured over email. So he needs to be able to quickly say which incident type is going to be more important to me, and if I invest in that, I'm going to reduce my risk. So there's various people at the table that all need to analyze this data in different ways, and it needs to be provided to them in a way that they don't become a data scientist, because who can afford to hire data scientists? They have to be able to do their jobs and in the process learn more about the problem that they're trying to solve. So let's talk a little bit more about aggregate. So threat intelligence platforms, you're going to find when you Google a term that there's a lot of different perspectives on what a threat intelligence platform is. And like I said, there's no right answer at this point. It's going to be the marketplace that, through maturation will come back to you all or to me and say this is what it actually means. But on the aggregate side, it's clear that a threat intelligence platform needs to be able to integrate data, and not just integrate the data you have in your network, maybe the data coming off your sensors, but also the data from the ecosystem of data providers, because they know everything. And the rule of thumb is that you can't just buy one or use one because they only know what they know. So you need to use them all. And the challenge with that is that you can't just do that without incurring a massive issue with data analytics, right? If you take all the feeds that you're buying today and you shove them into ArcSight, I think you're going to have more incidents. And more incidents in an already can't keep up world is not a good thing. And so when we look at fusing more data, enriching what we already know with more data, we need to do it in a data analytics sort of way. So the most important and the one thing that I really want to express here is that the best form of data is the data from your peers. It's not the vendor that sells you the $1 million feed. It's not a single vendor at all. It's a way of looking at the problem where you take the best from everyone. So it's raised by a village is the analogy. And so I really would urge you, if you're not already, to participate with your colleagues, internal organization, and externally with communities that are sharing threat intelligence. We find that the best way to defend your organization is to look at what's happening to your peers. And this is becoming a much more palatable idea recently with grassroots efforts coming up, and within the legal capabilities within the organization being able to more easily allow this kind of sharing. So communities being able to work together. This is what I love about this space, is that crowdsourcing meets data analytics is kind of what we're talking about here. But people aren't the answer either. You need to be able to automatically enrich your data based on what everyone knows about it. And so data services are the people that create threat intel and sell it. This is their dirty little secret. Or it's the really good researchers that hide their tradecraft and say, well, I found this through my own resources. So data services are the things that you can leverage to make sense of the data you're looking at. So it's a helping hand in the analytic process where you can have an incident, you can have a particular piece of malware. That piece of malware can be analyzed based on what has ever been connected to it. And so data services is another category of data here that's not threat intelligence. It's not something that's finished for you, but it gives you the ability to build up a picture of the problem with the ingredients from a variety of sources. And then there's the standby, and there's no silver bullet here, but there are lots of vendor feeds. There's free ones, there's paid ones, some cost a little, some cost a lot. You have your smorgasbord of options here. There is no silver bullet. So they all have strengths, they all have weaknesses, and on aggregate, they all create a single problem for you, which is more data. And so, again, start with the data you have, then add the data from others, make sense of that to make what you have shine brighter and make more sense. So there was a Ponemon report that came out probably 6 months ago that talked about threat sharing. And so I wanted to focus on this for a minute. I think that the sharing side of things is potentially going to enable a lot of benefit within your operations because it reduces the cost practically to zero. But there are challenges. One is never believe someone that says that we're creating a working group of threat researchers and we're going to use email as our communication. That's just going to create more work for you. You have to log into email every day. You're going to take those indicators that are shared. You're going to have to put them somewhere. You're going to have to tell somebody about them. It's likely going to be a forward. I already get enough email. I don't need more threat research being forwarded to me from the 56 email lists that you're on. And so think about the platform or the mechanism that these sharing circles will use to disseminate information so that you don't add more work to yourself. And another important factor of sharing is that you need to look at the data that comes into your organization the same way you look at all the rest of your data, whether it comes from another feed or it's coming from internal. You're going to have a process to which you need to support that data being enriched, made relevant, and disseminated within your organization. Some of that will be automated, and some of that can be manual. But you need to support that process universally, no matter where the data comes from. So I like the superhero picture here because I really do think that communities is going to make things change. It's going to be a game changer in the security industry. We're well beyond the ability for each of us to independently defend our organizations from the more sophisticated attacks that we may see. And so the only way to defend is to band together, to ultimately provide a crowdsourced effect so that we all understand what's happening to each other's organizations, and so we can make decisions as a group to get one step ahead of the threat. Another one of my, I would say, negative comments about the security industry right now from a technologist perspective is who here has heard the term machine readable threat intelligence or STIX? So don't tell the STIX folks this, but I'm going to put them in their place right now, and I want you all to take what I teach you and disseminate it. So STIX is not done. No matter what you hear, STIX is probably 50% of what we need as an organization or as a vendor or as a developer. I wear all those hats. I'm the CEO of a company and I write code. I can't write code with STIX today unless I'm going to create a self-licking ice cream cone. So STIX is moving in the right direction. So in proximity to being what we need, I would call it about 50%, maybe 70%, depending on what your use case is. The reality of STIX is that you've created an XML language to which you can create a standard, but the standard hasn't been created yet. So we've got some language that we now can speak, but we don't know what we're going to actually say. We don't know what we're talking about. And so the next phase of STIX beyond today, which is, I would call it a marketing term, where I support STIX, you support STIX, hooray. We all support STIX, but can I send you my STIX document, you send me yours, and it means something? Absolutely not. The only way that means anything is if you created a product or an application that so generically looks at data that it's meaningless. So we need to move beyond that to STIX for a specific product set or a specific use case. That's when we're going to have a true standard which allows me, as putting my development hat on, to build something without having to talk to anyone. Because developers don't like to talk to people. And the only way to build something today with Stix is if I sit down with your developer and we create a vocabulary that we call, in Stix terms, a profile, and then that profile is something we build to. But we have to do that, and we have to do it as a community before we're going to have the answer. I also want to disconnect XML vocabularies and languages from APIs. So I don't know enough about Taxi at this point to speak intelligently about it. It's just too new. But what I do know is a lot about APIs, and whether Taxi is the answer to an interoperable API or not. The thing that I wanted to recommend is it doesn't matter. So today, Twitter doesn't use a standard for their API. They still have extensive market opportunities because they have a very powerful API and a very powerful data set that can be used by all the people that want to incorporate data. So shoving an API down people's throat is not necessarily going to help move data around in a way that is going to be helpful. So that's my rant. I think that we're moving in the right direction, but I wanted everyone to realize that we're not there yet. So next, I want to talk about analyze. So analyze is that core of how we're going to look at data and how we're going to make sense of it. And this is the most important part of a threat intelligence platform, because without analyze, all you have is a bunch of data sitting in a database being consumed by a bunch of sensors on your network, which are then going to have events which are going to come back in and create more noise. So we need to be able to analyze what we have so that we can look for the right things at the right time and make sense of the massive amount of chaos that's likely happening in many of your organizations. And so the first step in a threat intelligence platform, being able to analyze anything, is to stop thinking that a data analytics platform is the answer. So you have to make a decision to say, I'm going to build around a specific set of use cases, and I'm going to understand that kind of data. So if your goal is to understand toilet paper analytics or data about toilet paper, maybe you need a different product set than for the security guy that wants to understand incidents and forensic data and malware. These are very specific things that you can build a platform around or a system around that understand those things really, really well, but don't maybe help you analyze your customer service data. So the diamond model is the thing I'm going to talk about, but this is replaceable across your organization with whatever type of data set that you believe is the thing that glues everything together, the methodology to which you would build a threat intelligence platform on. This is where you'd plug that in. Multiple sources, so I mentioned lots of data coming in, knowledge management, communities. These are all the tenets of what makes a good threat intelligence platform, because they're the things that allow your organization to glue together the different business processes. What matters here, though, is what those types of business processes are. So they can range from most organizations have some kind of signature management process. They're creating Yara, they're creating Snort, they're doing it on a daily basis. Most of them have created some kind of system to which they exchange that information across their organization. If they get a new threat intel report from someone, or one of their colleagues talks about something, they go back in their email and they do a search and they say, oh, that's part of signature number, whatever. The reality is that falls apart very quickly when you have more data. So when you start funneling more inputs into your aggregate phase, you need to be able to keep up with the processing of those inputs, or else you're going to end up just backing up your manufacturing process. Visibility, your IR team. Your IR team needs to be able to report what their findings are, so that the rest of the organization can see that, so that the SOC can distribute watch lists out to your sensors, to your IPS, your IDS, your blocking, and say these things need to be blocked right now because there's an incident unfolding. Today, all of that orchestration beyond with people and with products is being done by hand. And nowhere else in the business is that okay, and it shouldn't be okay here either. So the next 4 slides walk you through 4 different, this is, I had moved on to the third part of my presentation. So the second part is I'm going to walk you through the diamond model. Again, this is just one methodology to which a threat intelligence platform could be built upon. It's the one that our product was built upon, but it's not necessarily the only one. I think it's the best one, but I don't think that there's going to be other options as well. So what is the diamond model? So many of you may have read this or may use it in practice today, but the diamond model is an analytic methodology to make relationships across data. It allows you to look at a data set and look at the linkages between data across events, across adversaries, and things that you may want to analyze further. So in the Salesforce analogy, this is in essence how we start from a known, where we say, you know what, opportunities, contacts, leads, these are fundamental entities within the sales concept. So we don't need to create something that supports any concept. We can start by looking at this as our skeleton. This today is used by hand or in products to start that skeleton. So as I mentioned, hundreds of DFIR analysts use this. This was foundational in the creation of sticks, so it's not something that hasn't been validated by the community. And it's based on a set and graph theory concept that's been in use for over 10 years. So this is a foundational capability that I'm going to walk you through. All right, so what is the diamond? The diamond is, coincidentally, looks just like a diamond, baseball diamond. It's got 2 different vertices. The horizontal vertice is all about the capabilities and the infrastructure of an event. So this would be the technical access of the diamond. And then there's the vertical axis, which is the adversary and the victim. And this would be the geopolitical side of the diamond. And if you look across, so adversary might include things like the phishing email address that the adversary used to target your organization. It might include the email address they use for infrastructure creation. It could be the TTPs the adversary leveraged to launch this particular event. Layering on top of that, you add things like the malware they used, the exploits they used, any hacker tools that they might have leveraged. So we're building a data set right now, and whether you're building it because you got data from your best buddy over at company X, or whether you're doing an incident, it's the build-up process that is critical in making the data that you have make sense. So on the infrastructure side, so this would be, in essence, the infrastructure, the web infrastructure that the adversary used to target the victim. So it would include IPs, host names, potentially whois data about the infrastructure. Victim would be the lady in the HR department that loves to click on the phishing email. If you see over the course of a year that 4 incidents have resulted from her, you probably want to do some remedial training, or maybe just take away her email, something along those lines. Network assets of the victim. There's all kinds of information on the victim side that can help you make better decisions. So, for example, what they're working on at the time is a piece of information that I always ask, because ultimately you find really cool pieces of information, like they were involved in a project in the Middle East that maybe had something to do with merger and acquisition, where China was one of the the organizations that was looking at acquiring the company. So there's always cool stories in the concept behind who the victims are, and on the adversary side, who the adversaries are and what their strategic interests may be in those victims. There's also meta features. So meta features are various pieces of enrichment data that is layered on top of a diamond event. So these might include directionality. The kill chain phase is one that we see quite a bit. One of my co-founders likes to say that kill chain and diamond model are like peanut butter and jelly. They go together very well, and everybody likes them. And there's various pieces of information that might be added to an event. And it's also important to recognize that the diamond model is not a data structure. It's not sticks. It doesn't impose an ontology on you for how you store context about incidents or context about threat intelligence. It's actually built on the concept of providing a framework for relationships. So whether you use sticks or whether you use something that you built yourself, you can extend the diamond model to support, as long as it fits within this common framework, support the associations and the relationships across your data set. So unknowns and uncertainty are welcome in any model like this. You start from wherever you want and you put pieces of information into the buckets where they belong. It's the analytic engine underneath the process that helps you articulate the value of what you're looking at and the relatability of what you're doing to other things. So this is where a lot of the power of the diamond comes from. So let me just walk you through a quick scenario of how the diamond might be leveraged. So pivoting is something that all analysts love to talk about. It's basically the idea of looking at one piece of data and making decisions about the linkages of other pieces of data and being able to walk that process so that you can, at the end of the day, know something you didn't know because of the process to which you've analyzed the data. So let me just walk you through an example of the diamond model would look like for that. So you start with a piece of malware. This comes in off an incident, possibly. You send it off to your malware analyst, or maybe you analyze it yourself. You come up with a command and control of info.office_latest. This looks interesting. So now you're in that firefighting mode of I got to stop info.office_latest. It's command and control. What does this mean? Was the host infected? So you're fighting fires. You're reactionary. Well, if you look across the diamond, you could potentially take that info.office_latest and you could resolve to the IP address. You could then start proactively looking for everything else that happened within your organization that might have resolved to that same IP address. You could also take the host name. You could pull the whois record through the data services that I mentioned. You could then look for relationships between the email address used in the whois record that you know is bad, that's linked to this piece of malware, and every other host name that that adversary ever created or signed up for. So that would allow you then to proactively go back in time and look for all the other infrastructure that that adversary has ever created to see if you have any other issues. So we've definitely moved from the left to the right of the diamond. We stopped fighting the fire and we started looking for things that maybe we don't know if they're actually going to be a problem, but we're starting to broaden our horizons and become more predictive that if they came at us over here, there's a good chance they're going to come at us over here, and we should be ready for that to happen. So now taking this one step further, you have the idea of activity groups and chains of events. So the one diamond event signifies a particular event within a specific incident. And multiple diamond events make up a whole incident. But potentially, one incident is part of another incident. And so when you look at diamonds, this is where the real power of having a meta model or some kind of data structure underneath how you look at data analytics, you can start to predict things. Like, for example, incident 1 has a relationship at delivery and an action and objective, and that's all we know about maybe today within those 2 incidents. We also know that for incident 1, we saw the exploitation phase, and it was on a particular host. But on incident 2, we haven't picked up the exploitation phase yet. So there's things that you can do to start to fill in the gaps across incidents when you see a relationship to a previous incident. You can also start to build activity groups which take multiple incidents and start to predict that they are in fact the same adversary or the same tradecraft beyond one incident, because the graph, going back to the graph theory concept, you start to align events on top of each other, and the graphs start looking similar enough to make decisions upon. So, I already said this, I'll say it one more time. The power of looking at data in this layered approach is that you can look at the meta model of how all of the points in the diamond overlay with each other and their relationship to each other, so you can start to make sense out of the confusion of the data. So finally, the ACT side, I just want to walk you through a couple real-world examples. So on the first one's defense contractor. This is a 3-person team, an IT guy and 2 other IT guys, 2 of which are security guys in their free time. They use a threat intelligence platform to store and manage all of their Bro signatures. So they're creating Bro, they're putting it into the threat intelligence platform. It's then being consumed directly into their Bro cluster and hunted for. They also do a lot of community outreach. They're friends with their partners, and they're participating in sharing circles so that they can share what they saw to get their partner ahead of the threat, and they're getting in return some value from that when their partner sees something that they don't see. And that is all made integrated back into the threat intelligence platform sensor capabilities, so that you can take your firewalls, your SIMs, and you can bring that community data right into them so that there's an actionable integration there. And then finally, everybody loves visualization. These guys don't have enough time to research through visualization, but they definitely are interested in showing the boss the layout of the attack that happened, who touched what within their organization, what the victim's capabilities were to defend themselves. All of that visualization they use Maltego for. So second is a government installation. So they are looking at that analytic process of creating their own data. So first and foremost, they're leveraging data services to take and grow a flower and let the flower seed and fall to the ground and more seeds to pop up. So this is, again, what your threat intel vendors are doing today. They just don't tell you how they're doing it. You should be looking at how to do this across your incidents, across your data set, so that you can make that relationship. You can make your data into something that's more powerful. And finally, these guys also are very big advocates of sharing. They're sharing a lot of threat intel with their partners. There's multiple case studies that have been done where they've managed to find out about an attacker or an attack in advance of it actually happening based on what their partners were telling them was happening. Next one's a Fortune 500. These guys are oil and natural gas company, growing team from 4 to 10 people, using email and spreadsheets to do all their incident response, to do all of their data aggregation. They're moving to a threat intelligence platform mostly because they don't see that that's scalable. They need to work in a single system that is authoritative. So if one person gets fired or leaves the company, you know what they've done for the last 2-3 years when they were working there. and all that data that they touched, you've got a paper trail of what they did to it. And that's also an example of kill chain for those that like kill chain. So this customer leverages kill chain to keep track of all their diamond events as part of a kill chain phase. And then they can overlay diamond events as an activity group and portray them in a kill chain based approach so that they can leverage the data in the way that they need to make decisions. So the last one, Fortune 100 company, I met with them back about a year and a half ago now, big biotech firm. They were 3 people when I first talked to them, securing a billion-dollar company. A formidable challenge, and they all worked in the same room, but they weren't on the same page. So they were all heavily overwhelmed with ArcSight throwing events and their FireEye and everything that they had was all on overload, telling them they needed to do things, and they didn't know what to work on first. With the threat intelligence platform, they've been able to hire more people. They now have a follow the sun capability globally, and they are able to take the data that one analyst works on at the end of their business day and task another analyst to start working on it at the beginning of theirs. So just something as simple as removing email as the way that we communicate has helped this organization to better leverage the data that they're pulling in from their own incidents. So again, I don't want to not say that data is not powerful, and if I had a cloud with all security data, I wouldn't be happy. I'm a technologist. I'd find something to do with it. But let's not just create data to find something to do with it. Let's actually start by looking at the problem to which we're trying to solve. And I think that most organizations need to solve their internal data problem before they start looking at big data. So this is usable for those of you that were in the beginning of the presentation and saw the huge roll of toilet paper, and my analogy to big data is about as useful as a huge roll of toilet paper. This is what we need today. We need to understand what we can do, what's the state of the art, and being able to get ahead of the next incident. And the state of the art and the ability to leverage data go hand in hand, but we need to, as a community, come together and understand that it's not a silver bullet. We need to understand first and foremost what we're trying to accomplish, and when we understand that, then we know what the form factor of the solution might look like. So thank you. Are there any questions?
Probably just have time for one, really.
You talked about sharing data with peers.
Yeah.
Have you run into any folks who have started to implement data sharing with upstream, downstream supply chain providers? Yeah. Because their targeting profiles a little bit different.
So data sharing right now is moving so quickly that I don't think anyone can even keep pace. But just a couple inklings of so our product Threat Connect is a free threat intel sharing platform used around the world. We give away communities, so we've got researcher communities, we've got industries like the finance community. We have every form and size you can think of. And universally, what I would answer that question as, people are very enamored with threat sharing right now. The thing that's still missing, though, is the ground truth, the champions that actually are going to share things. So everybody loves the idea of creating a sharing community, but unless you have that champion, the leader internally, that understands the value of the data they have and understands what is sensitive and they shouldn't share it and understands what should be shared, you don't get the type of usage that you need out of a community. So insurance industry, very hot on sharing right now. Definitely supply chain within companies where they're starting to contractually obligate their vendors to be part of a sharing community so that they can bubble up any kind of events back up to them. So it's like running your SOC where you have inputs coming from your vendors and you're making decisions about your risk based on those vendors' exposure, not just your own. That's right. So it's a really hot idea right now, but I would not say it's reality that anything is really happening. We get a lot of requests for companies to say, we want to do that, but I haven't seen a whole lot of people that have implemented it. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. The next talk will be at 11.